Or renew your unanimous
Yeah,
consent.
just renew, I'll say it again, unanimous consent with me holding the floor that we adopt the committee amendment as the working document.
For amendments to be drafted to that. Is any objection? Hearing none, so ordered. Senator from Beaufort.
It's on the desk, Mr. President.
Members of the Senate, let me start my remarks by thanking the Majority Leader Shane Massey, Senator from Edgefield, and also the Minority Leader Senator Hutto, Senator from Orangeburg, for agreeing to put this bill on special order debate. You know, I've been here. This is my 14th year. It's hard for me to believe, but I know that it's difficult to get matters heard. It's difficult to get matters heard when there's not overwhelming support by the caucus, and I'm appreciative of the fact that I'm given this opportunity to talk about this bill in detail, to share with you why I think there's a lot of information that's being put out there. This information that I'd add is easily refuted, which I will refute. But ultimately, it's up to me to convince a majority of this body that this is in the best interest of the people of South Carolina, and I wanted to start by thanking them for, and for the body, for setting it for special order debate. I first got involved in medical cannabis in 2014. Some of you may recall we passed a law that year that legalized cannabis oil up to 0.9% of THC included in it for use by epilepsy patients. And so, you know, one of the things that we hear is that there's never been a case where the General Assembly has legislated medicine, or that the General Assembly has done something other than simply wait for the FDA to approve something, and that's just not the case. In 2014, we passed a cannabis oil with THC law that allowed epilepsy patients to benefit from it, and they have benefited from it. We've also just recently, a 3 years ago, passed the right to try legislation, which, as you'll recall, if you were terminally ill, and that law authorized physicians to use non-FDA approved medicines that had some clinical trials, as cannabis has, but had not been approved by the FDA, and we passed that. And I think that has succeeded in giving some terminally ill patients some alternatives that they didn't currently have. So this notion that we've never authorized through legislation the use of medicine is just disproved in those two instances just during the time that I've been here. After that 2014 legislation that passed this body and over in the House, I think almost unanimously, maybe a few votes in opposition, and signed into law by Governor Haley. In the course of researching that particular legislation, I became aware of the other conditions for which cannabis can be medically efficacious. And so what I then did is, over the last 7 years, and numerous subcommittee hearings, well over 100 witnesses for and against, and this bill has been looked at and vetted and amended, and I'll go through that process later too. But one of the things that I decided early on, was that this was going to be a different kind of medical cannabis bill. It wasn't going to be like the medical cannabis bills in the 36 other states that have medical cannabis laws. Because I wanted it to be a very tightly regulated medical bill that made clear in no uncertain terms that it was meant to provide medicine, and put in safeguards against it becoming a de facto adult use or recreational use. Because I think, and I'll be talking about some of the polling data later, I think that's where the majority of South Carolinians are. I think the majority of South Carolinians, and not just by a bare majority, you were talking by a 70 to 75%, they want to empower doctors to give cannabis to patients if, in that doctor's opinion, and after making an in-person diagnosis, determines that cannabis could be of medicinal benefit to the patient. And unlike other states, we have a very tightly defined window of conditions that can qualify. And the reason it's tightly defined, and there's 13 conditions. I mean, unlike, for instance, Mississippi, which is about to enact their medical cannabis law, has a couple dozen. This one has only 13 because I only wanted to have conditions in this bill listed for which there is solid medical, peer-reviewed medical evidence that cannabis can be a benefit. Okay, so when I go through these, and I'm going to go through each one of these and talk about the studies, the peer-reviewed studies that talk about the efficaciousness of cannabis to treat them, here's what we'll be talking about. These are the universe of conditions for which doctors can authorize cannabis use by patients. Cancer, multiple sclerosis, a neurological disease, including epilepsy, glaucoma, PTSD, Crohn's disease, sickle cell anemia, ulcerative colitis, wasting syndrome, autism, severe or persistent nausea, a chronic medical condition causing severe and persistent muscle spasms, and any chronic or debilitating disease or medical condition for which an opioid is currently or could be prescribed by a physician. So those are the universe of conditions that can qualify. In regard to PTSD and chronic pain, there was some concerns expressed along the way that to some degree those conditions are subjective. To some degree, they're not like multiple sclerosis or Crohn's disease or that have empirical evidence that you're suffering from a condition. And there was a concern that could be a loophole through which a whole universe of individuals could come in trying to get medical marijuana when they really didn't need it. And so we amended the bill to say that in instances of PTSD, it pains me to do it, but there has to be a written evidence or authoritative evidence that the individual seeking cannabis for PTSD has had an underlying trauma experience in terms of what that experience was. So, okay, we put that in. In regard to chronic pain, we put in there that it needs to be tied to something that is diagnosable by a physician, that the pain relates to something that can actually be empirically diagnosed by a physician. So again, that was an attempt to work around this argument that somehow people might be faking it, or which I would just submit economically doesn't make any sense, because why would you commit a fraud and a felony and get a medical cannabis card to get cannabis for twice what you could then go down the street and buy it? So, but anyway, we put that in there. And there's other examples of amendments, tightening of language that occurred over time. Some requested by Laura Hudson from the victims group, some requested by Chief Keel, some requested by the South Carolina Medical Association, some requested by the faith community. And I'm going to go through all those requests and show that in every instance, we listened to their concerns and put them into the bill. Some very drastic ones, for instance. I mean, unlike most medical cannabis laws, and unlike the one Mississippi is about to pass, you can't burn leaf. You can't smoke marijuana. There's something about that law enforcement really objected to, that if somebody was smoking a joint or burning leaf, that they would not be able to distinguish immediately whether or not this person was taking it for medicinal reasons or was smoking it recreationally. So we made it so that it was oils. That could be a tincture or taken orally, or it could be rubbed on your skin, or it could be vaped. And we'll talk about the vaping section as well. But I'm going to get into it into some detail. And the senator from Cherokee said something to me in medical affairs that stuck with me, and it reminded me that I really hadn't done my job up until that point, and that I was making arguments I think his quote was, "My heart tells me you're right, but my head tells me be careful." And so what I've attempted to do over the last several months is make the intellectual argument, make the argument based on logic, make the argument based on the law, make the argument based on what do these empirical studies show. Because we've had, in some instances, 2 decades of experience that states have had with medical cannabis law. So we can look at some of the societal ills that some worry about, and we can look and see whether or not they're justified. And so I'm going to stick to evidentiary things, for lack of a better phrase. But I did want to start, that having been said, and before we get down into to the nuts and bolts of this, I was going to say into the weeds, but I wouldn't say that. I want to, and I think this is important, because I want to show a video clip of testimony by one of my constituents, somebody I think most people in this room knows, Margaret Richardson, who is the wife of Scott Richardson, who used to hold my Senate seat. He became Department of Insurance commissioner back in 2007, I think, and he stepped down, and then that gave rise to elections to fill that seat, and ultimately I took that seat in 2009. But I want to emphasize this because I want you, as we go through this, I want you to remember this, because this is to me is key. Please show it.
I'm Margaret Richardson, and I come here today as a wife, a mother, a sister, a grandmother, and 2014 I was stricken with a condition that Emily's familiar with, evidently, trigeminal neuralgia. And I'm a tomboy, grew up kicking the guys in the shins and running around the yard like a boy. I never thought that I would be relegated in a fetal position, wasting away on prescribed opioids in my bed. I'm still, from the onset of the trigeminal neuralgia, in spite of 2 wonderful surgeries at Emory, recovering from the devastation of the prescribed opioids on my stomach. I took them only 4 months because now my face and head are full of wires. I have a transmitter to try to override the pain from the trigeminal neuralgia. When the pain wins, you land on the floor and scream out like an animal. It's a tough situation to be in. And when the one legal solution, opioids, as you know, can cause so many grim side effects. I read recently that 58,000 South Carolinians this year will die from opioid overdosing. And at this point, when I took what I was allowed to take and prescribed to take, I withered away. I had to stop taking them. My rig, as I affectionately call it, worked for 3 years. A year ago, April, out of nowhere, the screaming, because I woke up. And trigeminal neuralgia is like having a Bunsen burner turned on in the side of your head. It's not something that you can ignore. And since the one legal solution, opioids, almost killed me, because I have to be honest, without my husband to feed me, I was too weak to get out of the bed to even walk to the kitchen to feed myself. And another thing about the opioids, with a lot of people, I can't speak to all of them, is it's not just that it wrecks your stomach or puts you to bed. It takes you out of life. Yes, it blocks the pain. But in addition, I had to quit my job. It steals your life. And I wasn't about to take, when it came back, the very thing that almost ended everything for me. So I looked for something new. And because of 4 years of this condition, people knew I was suffering, and some people came forth. I didn't even know what medical cannabis was until last fall. And quite frankly, I can understand why it's overwhelming to you all, because the stereotypical Woodstock hippie is what a lot of us think of. But that's been replaced by tiny children with 100 epileptic seizures per hour, or people like me who are suffering, or whether our precious soldiers have post-traumatic stress disorder. And off of what they have mimics what I have with the blast in their head. And I was told by one of the statisticians at Emory that not only do our veterans get the pain, which is intractable, but also the memory of being blown up or whatever else happens to them. So I just implore you to please give those of us in need a chance. I'm a law-abiding citizen. I cannot tell you what it felt like to come into possession of something that, A, I didn't know if it was going to be damaging. I don't know if what's on the label is true because it's not regulated. But my only choice was to scream in pain, so I opted to try it. I have to creep around like a criminal. If I want to go on a trip or get in my car, I have to worry about being pulled over. And just a quick example, and I'm almost finished. But I went to a wedding in Greenville, South Carolina. I didn't want to get my host, who were driving me, in trouble because my husband was out of town. I went to the wedding, and shortly after the bride and groom began to dance, I had an attack. I staggered out. I tried to hit the Uber app. I could not do it. I was shaking so hard. My friends witnessed what only my husband has seen. Sobbing you can't stop, trying not to scream, doing your natural childbirth breathing so that you can control yourself. Got to the hotel. They wanted to call the paramedics. And I said, please let me get to my room to my medicine, which was medical cannabis. And what I learned is medical cannabis is anti-inflammatory. So my condition's neurological. Instead of the grim side effects associated with opioids, I'm able to take something that actually stops the pain. I've gotten to get up, get dressed, go to a child's ball game, be a semblance of a wife to my husband. And I'm not here for just me. I'm speaking for your constituents all over this wonderful state who are suffering in silence or don't have a husband to care for them and drive them up here, because I couldn't get myself here. And finally, I will close with this. Please do not let a spirit of fear keep you from allowing people with legitimate need to go to a doctor and get medical cannabis that will treat their pain or their suffering, because a no vote basically means our choices are opioids. I've already discussed what that would mean to me, and if you read the headlines, you know what it will mean to a lot of other people. Please give us a chance to be treated with something that can actually help our conditions, and don't let us creep around in fear, or I'll be just very open with you. I truly believe if this sits for years, that every year Emily knows people and I don't even know her. But you will have constituents suffering, dying, many of them taking their own lives, because physically there is only so much someone can endure when they are in blinding pain 24/7. So I thank you for your consideration, and I would also like to say I have such confidence in Tom Davis and this body of lawmakers that you all can craft a fine bill that is so strictly regulated it will not behoove people to break the law. And I'm so grateful for SLED and our law enforcement who put their bodies in line to protect us every day, that they can enforce the legislation that you all come up with. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Richardson.
Is there any question?
Senator from Richland, then Anderson, real quickly.
Thank you, Ms. Richardson. I just want to say thank you for coming. Thank you for the courage to say what you've said. And my only regret is that I hope that all of my colleagues, the entire Senate, in fact, the entire General Assembly, could have heard your remarks. So thank you. God bless you. And thank God for your husband, a great friend, former colleague. But just thank you. Very moving. And it is, and I would say, your testimony and others that I've heard is the reason I support this bill. I'm a pastor, a minister. My father was a pastor and a minister. His father was a deacon. Our whole family is a family of ministers. So this is not about religion. This is about what you have spoken of here today. So thank you for coming. And Senator from Beaufort, Senator Davis, and others who've worked years, and he and I have talked about this and worked on this. So I hope and pray that we will get an opportunity to vote on this bill. And I hope and pray that one day you can return to Columbia and you can witness a bill signing with the governor. Thank you. May God bless you.
Jackson.
Senator from Anderson.
Member Senator, I wanted you to see that because ultimately what this bill is about, and I'm going to go through every single legal argument that's been put up there: federal preemption, lack of medical evidence, unintended societal consequences, and take them all up and discuss them and refute them. But I wanted to keep your mind focused on what we're after here is how can people like Margaret Richardson get access to something that clearly helps her safely and legally? How can we do that? I've come up with a 49-page bill that I think is pretty tight, that has protections against abuse, that limits the conditions to those for which there's empirical evidence showing that they can be treated by cannabis. But if you've got some other ideas, if you've got ways to make this bill better, I'm open to them. I mean, among the 45 of us in this room, as Margaret Richardson said, we can come up with a carefully crafted bill that enables her, in consultation with her physician, to get something that provides her with relief, legally and safely. And right after Margaret Richardson testified, a member of the South Carolina Medical Association sat down to testify. And I asked that doctor, I said, you just heard Margaret Richardson's testimony. What would you do if you had a daughter who was howling in pain in bed like an animal, and there was something right on her bedstand that she could take one puff of and the pain would go away? What would you tell her? He goes, I would tell her that we have to wait until the FDA approves this. I said, no, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. Nobody would. And that's what we're forcing people like Margaret Richardson to do, is to break the law and to go out there and buy a dime bag, not knowing what it's in it, not know if it's got, adulterants in it or fentanyl or something that can hurt her, but she has to do it because she's got no other choice. No other choice.
Senator from Greenville, Senator Corbin, what purpose do you rise?
Well, I didn't want to interrupt the senator in his opening remarks, but would you yield for a quick question?
Sure.
Because this was in
Senator,
regard to the video. I was trying to listen carefully and make mental notes of what Ms. Richardson was saying. Was I correct when I heard her say that there were 58,000 deaths in opioid-related deaths in South Carolina?
She was talking about nationwide. She did say South Carolina, but I think that was nationwide.
Okay, thank you. I just would like to make that clarification because I fact-checked it over here, and that number is way off.
Yeah, no, that's a nationwide figure.
Okay, thank you, Senator.
Senator from Beaufort.
All right, so what I'm going to do is, I might as well just address the literal elephant in the room here.